there is no PlayStation showcase for the rest of this year, or at least after months of speculation on what PlayStation might show off. Jeff Grubb, notable insider, notable leaker of various things, has tweeted, "Don't get your hopes up," in response to someone asking what will be happening for a PlayStation showcase in December, or also the rest of 2024. Now, I just want to talk about that in general because I feel like PlayStation are in the middle of figuring out what the hell they want to do going forward. And obviously, there's the likes of Wolverine, Death Stranding 2, Neil Druckmann's new game, which isn't Last of Us 3. But Druckmann was recently speaking at an event with BioShock's Ken Levine, saying that he has full creative control on this different game that apparently has been in the works since 2020. So you'd think that will be ready to be shown off, or at least some sort of version, a preliminary thing, maybe it's a title or something like that, will be ready to be shown off. So I think there's a lot of strong irons in the fire for PlayStation, especially when it comes to single player stuff. But in theory, they're not ready to show any of them off yet. And I think that they have had such a weird, messy year. Like Concord being closed after 2 weeks is historic, to be honest. And so you did then have CFO Hiroki Totoki saying we're doubling back down on single player. But I wonder how long that takes to sort of get all the ducks in a row and go, okay, we're all unified on this new vision. That's what we're going to be doing going forward. Because there's more to that, but thoughts on what this means, I think.
Truthfully, I don't think it means too much about.
It means everything, Josh.
Brand being in disarray. I do think it's disappointing. I think I would have loved to have seen a proper showcase from Sony this year. I've enjoyed the few state of plays that we've had, but I would have wanted more presence. But I can see why they don't feel the need to do it right now. Like you said, we know that Death Stranding 2 is going to be next year. Ghost of Yotei that they've announced. Wolverine, fingers crossed, or something from Insomniac will be next year as well. And all of those games, apart from maybe Wolverine, we've seen relatively recently, and I think we will see in lieu of a showcase or a state of play, I think they'll have a presence at the Tokyo Game Show. I think we will definitely see probably more Death Stranding there, maybe something else that arrives that doesn't need its own kind of state of play or showcase to show off. I think they probably haven't shown one this year as well, because even though, and I've banged on about this a lot, even though a lot of people have been calling it kind of a quiet year for Sony, they have had constant releases. Even in the past few months, we've had Silent Hill 2, Astro Bot, Lego Horizon Adventures, not all straight first-party titles, I'll concede, but a lot of output from Sony that's either a Sony brand or is a console exclusive, right? Early in the year, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, like they've had quite a stacked year.
You're not wrong.
Even if we haven't seen that peek behind the curtain, I hope we get something in spring 2025. I do think they should have stuff to show off. Like you said, they made the live service pivot. It didn't really work. But even when they made that pivot, like in their own internal presentations, they were still focusing a lot on single player. We still know that Neil Druckmann had that game in production. We know that Sucker Punch, obviously they've been working on Ghost of Yotei. There's been Santa Monica that is working on a few things. Apparently that Horizon multiplayer game might be coming next year as well. So we know they have been cooking stuff. I guess they haven't felt the need to show it off this year. But hopefully we see something sooner rather than later, because I just like showcases, Scott Tailford. I like being hyped no matter who's doing them. And to be fair, to Xbox's credit, they have had pretty good showcases this year. Whether it was like the smaller direct style things or like the bigger, lavish, here's what we've got for the next year and a half or 2 years. They have never stopped doing that. No games, but a promise again.
It might be coming.
It might be coming. I think Sony, especially because, as we mentioned on one of the podcasts last week, they don't really have that competition anymore. Xbox is obviously there making moves, but making moves on a completely different battlefield almost, where I don't think Sony even feels the need to get out there and show exactly what they're working on and the next, half decade of PlayStation.
True. I think like the overall thing for me is like I'm just curious where they sit. Like we saw that experiment towards the live service stuff. Do you think that Fair Games still makes it out? Like, I mean, we've talked about it a few times, but just like the last remnants of the other the live service push. But at the same time, like you said, like Horizon multiplayer is still going to be coming. That seems like one of the only ones that was kept after everything else was gotten rid of, alongside Concord. But Fair Games is also still in the works. And it's just like that is in the conversation of like, should a major first party console maker have a live service component alongside them. Like one of the things that's leaked for the Switch 2 is Nintendo's attempt at this, which is like this massive sort of fake planet thing that everyone lives on, everyone's building stuff and crafting together and whatever, and that seems to be a new IP or a new attempt at this infinite game thing. That's Nintendo's spin on it. Sony's has been like, let's do multiplayer components or potential multiplayer components for The Last of Us. Like, I still maintain the God of War Ragnarok bonus edition thing. The roguelike mode in there would have been their repeat thing. And obviously Helldivers, and then potentially Concord that then failed. Like, Fair Games is the last bit of that initial conversation that was in the Jim Ryan era before he left, and now you've got the Herman Holst and I forget the name of the other guy, Nishino's like era as it kicks in. I'm curious what that era feels like, and we've mentioned it a lot over the last few years of covering this stuff, but the Jim Ryan era was so cold, and I think that taking this amount of time gives you more of a space in between those eras. But I'm so curious what the foot forward is on the Holst and Nishino era, because so far teasing that era has been more classics on the PlayStation Plus store, has been more catering to the fan base kind of thing, and I'm eager for that to kick in a bit more and get more momentum behind like all of this stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I'm looking forward to that, but I do think that is where we definitely will have to be waiting a few years for that stuff to kick in, because I think the potential 2025, right, of Fair Games, Marathon, Death Stranding, Ghost of Yotei, and one more that I'm forgetting, Wolverine, if they all hit, if that was like the envisioned lineup for 2025 under Jim Ryan, I bet he'd be viewing that as like a huge success. Two big live services coming alongside 3 big single-player games. One is second party with Kojima, but still a PlayStation franchise, at least in the short term. Whereas now you look at the demise of Concord and you look at Marathon, which Bungie just seems like they're a complete mess right now. Yep. All the reports that have come out over this year about mismanagement and layoffs and all the rest, like that thing doesn't look like it's in great shape. Will that even arrive next year? It was supposed to be 2024 and apparently it got delayed. Who knows if that drops? Fair Games, now definitely everyone will be looking at that to be another Concord. That reveal trailer for Fair Games just looked like Live Service 101. Didn't even look like Sony in many respects, I don't think. So I think Fair Games, I think both of those live service games will come out. Whether they last more than a couple of months, I don't know. They've got to be special. I don't want them to fail. I want Fair Games to be good and surprise us all, but just kind of looking...
I'll be amazed.
I know, I'll be amazed too, but I hope they succeed, but I don't think it's a guarantee that anyone will care, and we've seen with Concord just how bad it can be. Again, we talked about the ceiling with EA, but how low the floor has got. The floor's in hell now, and you can just release games that go straight into the pit, and hopefully Fair Games isn't one, but I don't really have much confidence.
Do you think overall, just to sort of round this out, that like on that first party front, that idea of the live service stuff has nearly always been associated with the third parties. It's been associated with money grubbing stuff, like the Ubisoft approach, the Warner Brothers approach, whatever it is, and most of them have failed. Like across the last few weeks, Multiverses has like been revealed as a whole failure. It's like this whole bomb alongside Suicide Squad. Warner Brothers are reapproaching how they want to, do their gaming wing kind of thing. The first party, the Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo side of things, is almost seen as like above that stuff, where like it's a way bigger deal if they try and do something more money grubby, and it fails because it's more of an indictment on the console ecosystem, and so they've for the most part stayed away from that. And obviously Sony have tried that, and then you got mixed results to it. Helldivers is obviously really good. What do you think about that stuff? That like should the console manufacturer in the modern day, where this stuff is more accepted, if you can get it right, should they even be in that space at all?
I think so, if you can get it right. I think, to me, Sony, even though it's not always been their bread and butter, they have a reputation for making good multiplayer suites. Like, they've always been underrated, but how we still talk about The Last of Us Factions. There was a reason why we gave that online spin-off that Naughty Dog was making the benefit of the doubt, just because, it was a live service, which a lot of us, rightly so, kind of bristle against, but Naughty Dog have created solid multiplayer suites, so there was maybe cause for optimism there. What could they do if they blew that out to its own game? Maybe it's going to be good. And I just think it depends. You can't be trend chasing with it, I don't think. We've seen that. That's partly why Concord died, because it was 7 years too late to the Overwatch party, and it didn't... defined itself as giving players anything that established franchise already gives them. Whereas, in my opinion, like a Last of Us themed extraction shooter, yes, it's an extraction shooter, but that's something. That's like, we know that factions model is a little bit different. And I think if they can really leverage the uniqueness of their IP, I don't think it's... I don't want to see them go all in on it, but I don't think, you can't do it at all. I think Helldivers 2 being so successful proves that if you get something good enough, if you get something with a heart to it, if you get something that offers something that's a lot of somethings there, that the competition doesn't, like, people will respond to it and people will be willing to buy into that ecosystem. But when it's just a blatant, here's a version of a thing that you already play, like, people don't respond to that.
I think the hype and expectation side of it is key as well, where we're almost in an era of the more you tell me this is the next big thing, the more you tell me this is everything, and I need to play it, I need to pull this money into it, we're launching with 5 premium currencies, and aren't you going to live on this thing for a couple of months? Most people now just go, nah, I'm good, to be honest. Like, I'm all right. I don't need that. Helldivers 2 blew up with very little marketing. It was very clear, at least to me, that Sony did not believe in that game, and they had ostensibly written it off as just this thing that Arrowhead had been working on for about 10 years, and then it blew up because of that general word of mouth, floor level hype that then other people came, okay, what's everyone talking about over there? Okay, let's go see. And then we get in more naturally and more organically. Whereas like Concord was like, this is, the next big first person shooter. It's like backed by Sony. Look at all these characters. Look how big this is going to be. And then it was so easy to be like, nah, I'm good. And I feel like it's an interesting line to walk. And some of that goes alongside people's general apathy towards where like superheroes are at, or like, certain Hollywood models that people are sick of. Movies like Red One completely bombing because it's another one of them 101, and I think you're up against all of that in the modern day. But to bring it all the way back to PlayStation, I guess they're just going to ride out the rest of this year, which has been quite a tumultuous year for them, and a historically bad one in some respects, and then come back swinging next year.
It's weird, man. Well, we're going to look back on 2024, funnily enough, the midpoint of the generation, as such a strange year for them, because they have had big bombs, right? But again, if you're looking at it on paper, if you were going into 2024, right, and you said we have the PS5 Pro launching, we've got a brand new live service with Concord, we've got all of these second party and third party exclusives, Final Fantasy, Helldivers, Silent Hill, just to name a few, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, Black Myth, you've got Astro Bot, you've got Lego Horizon Adventures, you've got all of these games, like genuinely, like 15 games that are exclusive to your console. You've got a whole new console you bring into the ecosystem. I bet you thought, we can't lose with this. And yet they've had bombs so big that I just wonder how they view this year. As a gamer, I view it as a success because I've had so much to play, but like, what do they think of it? Do they view it as a stopgap? Do they view it as an experiment that hasn't worked out? Or do they view more hits than misses and say, yeah, that was a success, let's do more of that and try to cut back on the live service stuff that they've already announced? It's going to be interesting.
I think they do view it as a success, because I think you do realize that Sony can be both. It's just that I think if you were pie charting it, it's majority single player. It's not that you can't have your Helldivers 2s ticking over on the side, but that shouldn't be what you go all in on, which is what so many people bounced off when they announced so many live service titles in a row. And it was like, well, this isn't what you're known for. That's not what we come to you for after you built such a legacy on the PlayStation 4. Like, you doubled down on your first party story stuff after Last of Us 1. So, I think you can do those things, but the intent has to be pure, and it has to be, the game has to need to exist. Concord did not need to exist. It didn't feel like a worthwhile title, and it died because of it. So I think if you're going to do a multiplayer game that has the Sony branding on it, it should feel as purposeful as a Last of Us, as a Ghost of Tsushima, or whatever it is, those first steps that were taken kind of thing. And we'll see whether something like Fair Games can feel like that. But even right now, it feels worlds away from anywhere near the level of hype or importance or whatever that was in those other games when we were building to them.